Welcome to ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm Jay Fidell.
And I'm Kaui Lucas.
In our show this time, we'll cover the January Downtown Forum program on jobs for Hawaii at the Anthology Theater in Bishop Square.
The panel included captains of industry, economics, and academia, with a Millennial Challenge speaker to start them off.
The question of the day was, how are we doing? What can we do to improve things? And what will happen if we don't do anything?
We may be making money in tourism and paving over the landscape, but at the same time, we are growing our disparity and eroding perhaps our most valuable resource, the talent, energy, diversity, and presence of our human resources that we love so much and that clearly represent the future of our state.
A job is more than a political football. Every job holder holding a job is an important element of our economy and plays a role in making our society more productive, serving the common good, and assuring that our community will survive and prosper.
For so many reasons, it's clear that we need jobs, and good careers in Hawaii. The more we have, the happier we will all be, and of course, vice versa.
So we wanted to know whether the status quo is acceptable, whether the loss of our graduates is acceptable, and what, if anything, should we do about it?
Should we leave it to the market to generate jobs? If not, what affirmative action should we take to generate jobs, and in what sectors? How much should we be willing to spend on incentives?
To start things off, we had Justine Espiritu as our Millennial Challenge speaker to tell the panel what she hoped they would address.
I'm worried about the idea that we've focused so much or continue to focus on tourism, that's what we've done well and that's what we should continue. But I think my generation sees there's a lot of potential for innovation and adaptation in industries and collaborations that are a result of the challenges that come as kind of an isolated island. We want to see diversity, and we want to have livable wages so we can continue to live here and continue to contribute to this community. We don't want to accept that we should have lower expectations in order to stay here. And I hope you guys also don't think that my generation needs to lower our expectations of what we hope out of a meaningful life and career and potential to own homes and support families.
We had a very Akamai panel to help us make this inquiry, to understand the job market, its causes, effects, and how it informs other social and economic phenomena in our state.
First, we heard from Mitch, chairman of Kaui Ranch Management Limited and the Harold K. L. Castle Foundation.
In America and in Hawaii, and I want to talk a little bit about problems and I'll get around to solutions, but I want to try to motivate us all to do a few things today. You know, in the United States, in Hawaii, there's many special interest groups. And they speak out a lot. And unfortunately, a whole bunch of these groups are anti-jobs. And that comes to mind for me, that troubles me. I read the newspaper this morning, and two of the anti-jobs groups were demonstrating on the first day of the legislature. And the anti-TMT science jobs at Mauna Kea group was one of those groups. And the anti-GMO farming group was the other group that was demonstrating at the legislature. And when I hear people talk about those subjects, I don't very often hear people talk about how important the jobs are. And research science jobs at a big research university are high-paying jobs for Hawaii residents. And a lot can come out of that. And then if we build the science and research at the university, other opportunities led by people like Susan will spin out of that. There's an anti-cane burning group. And then there's people that don't think we should have the military here, and there's people that don't think we should have tourism. In Kailua, Oahu, where I spent a little time, there's people that didn't think we should have a Target. There's 275 jobs, and the general manager was born and raised in Kailua. We don't have an inter-island ferry because there are people that are anti-inter-island ferry, and a whole bunch of other jobs would have spun out of that. So I'd like to suggest that we all become pro-jobs. And Jay mentioned earlier about how important jobs are. My message is each and every single job in the state of Hawaii is important. They help people provide for families, for their lifestyle, And from a state economic point of view, they take people off the welfare rolls, they allow them to pay taxes, and they have them spend money in the economy. So jobs are important, and quite frankly, if all the anti-job forces I just mentioned prevailed and all those things happened, Hawaii would be Puerto Rico. And the U.S. Treasury Secretary told Congress yesterday that Puerto Rico needed bankruptcy protection and they needed to change the law so that could happen, because the military left Puerto Rico because there was a lot of opposition. And I just don't think we should be confident about any single job. And then if all those things happened and we got in that kind of, we'd lose a bunch of state jobs, because if the state weren't able to pay its debts and pay its obligations, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that happens. So that's a troubling thing to me. And it's like, every time I hear somebody speaking out against an industry or against a job, I'd like to hear somebody stand up and say, you know what, those jobs are really important. We just lost HC&S, and my life in Hawaii has been a life where agriculture was greatly supported by most of the people in the state of Hawaii. And I credit A&B and HC&S for keeping it alive as long as they did.
Next, we heard from Jack Suyderhoud, professor of economics at the Scheidler College of Business at UH Manoa.
I basically wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the reality of the Hawaii labor market, because it's this reality, and we've already alluded to it, is what's driving our concerns. And so I thought I'd pick out 3 points about the Hawaii labor market that I think are really important for us to remember. And anybody who wants to have access to this data, I'll be happy to send it to you, send it to Jay or whatever. In fact, Jay has it on his computer already, so go ahead and do whatever you want with it. But the first thing I thought I'd mention is that what we already know, which is we're small potatoes. I mean, really. We're what I would call a very thin labor market. This is us compared to some West Coast labor markets, and Los Angeles, for example. Not just Los Angeles itself, but going out to San Bernardino and south a bit. That's the Los Angeles labor market. The San Francisco, just the San Francisco and South Bay area. Seattle, Portland, and then here we are, Hawaii. And we just have to understand that scale matters in the sense that we have fewer job opportunities here because we are smaller. We don't have the breadth of economic activity that other areas have, and we don't have access to that economic activity that other areas have. And so I don't want to throw cold water on this. I just, I think we need to understand what defines our problems and what are the limitations and opportunities that those issues create. So we're a small labor market. Especially if you have specialized skills, and increasingly these days, high-paying jobs are associated with specialized skills. That specialized skills, your specialized skill may not line up with what the Hawaii job market has available. And that realization is important. I describe job markets as being global. And people who are generally trained for global job markets these days. And if you can find something in Hawaii that fits with your specialization, with your passion, then happy days. If you can't, and if you want to stay here, it's going to be frustrating. Or you have to go somewhere else and accept the sacrifice in a slightly different fashion, which is a locational sacrifice, perhaps, to what you prefer, which is being in Hawaii. So that's item number one. Item number two is what we've been doing for the last 5 years in terms of the labor market itself. And since 2010 was the low point in our job counts from the latest recession. Since 2010, we have created about 48,000 jobs in Hawaii, which is a pretty good number, and it's more than the labor force has grown, which is why the unemployment rate has come down. So that's the good news. that perhaps not so good news, or the reality is that about a third of those jobs were created in what we would call the tourism sector, right? And as much as we want to badmouth tourism sometimes, you know, this is who we are in terms of an economy. If we did not have tourism, we would, you know, the entire state economy would be more like the Molokai economy. And our unemployment rate, instead of being 3-point-something%, would be 9-point-something%. And there would be many fewer job opportunities. So, so what we see here is that, you know, we're still, in terms of the aggregate numbers, that, you know, the action is still in the traditional areas where we've been. That doesn't mean we should stay there, but it, you know, it tells us, you know, this is where we've been in this regard.
Next, we heard from Richard Wacker, President and CEO of American Savings Bank.
I want to talk about some work we've been doing as part of the Business Roundtable. So the Business Roundtable is really the largest companies in Hawaii, probably the largest employers. And there's about 50 members of the Roundtable, and we get together to work on things that we think are important for the state. And generally, it's around the economy, it's around education, and it's around healthcare, are the areas that we've tended to focus our time. And this issue of how do we grow the economy, how do we grow jobs, has been one that we've been, as you mentioned, wrestling with for a long time. And more recently, we've taken up really looking hard at the innovation sector, because we think that it is one of the niches that would work. And we think with a little bit of the work that we've done visiting successful places and talking to them about what worked and what didn't, that we have a really good chance to make it work here in Hawaii. And we think it's one of the best chances that we've got. When we look at all the things that can grow and add jobs, we think it's one of the best chances that we've got, and we ought to work on it a bit more. And collaboratively with state and public and private sector and the university. So from the work that we did in a lot of places, and we did visit San Diego, we visited Utah, we visited Washington, we talked to people in Cleveland and other places where parts of it came. Big parts of the lessons that we saw were that we needed to get a common language, and we saw that specifically in San Diego, where over time, and it didn't happen overnight, but over time, there's really a strong understanding across the community, public and private sector, about what they're trying to do and what works to help support this sector. The universities, research-oriented universities, are a big part of it. If they work right and if they view their role as contributing to growth in the local economy, they're a big part of making it work. The growth, I think a lot of times here when we talk about research at our university, sometimes people perceive it as just in the interest of the researchers. Oh, that's great. That's just for them. They'll have their research projects. But in fact, when you look at it, the ripple effect creates jobs all across the economy, and it creates an environment where we think more job and company creation can happen. And so that healthy innovation ecosystem in total is really important to making it work. And we just have to work on it. And it doesn't happen overnight. It isn't something that's going to just say, let's create a tech sector and next week it'll be here. It's going to be a 20-year, 30-year project, just like it was in a lot of these other markets. So we looked at it, and one of the things about the common language and why we think this sector is important for us is, you know, we're accustomed to looking at the chart on the economy this way, where you look at the size and the jobs and the contribution basically to the economy. And we do see, you know, tourism's important, military's important, and there's the rest of it. But one of the real nice articulations of the way to look at the economy that we got out of this work was, you know, maybe we really need to look at it a little bit differently in terms of tradable sectors, right? So tourism's important because it is an area that brings money into the state, right? It's not like any other sector, but it brings money into the state, and we compete for that money with other areas. People can choose to go to a lot of other areas, spend their tourism dollars. We compete by the way we market, the experience we create, the seats that we get available for people to come here, the facilities that we create, and the whole experience. The same thing with the military. That's not free. We compete with other markets for the military presence here, and we need to make it easier for them to do training. We need to make the schools be acceptable and great for the families of the troops who are coming here to be stationed here so that their kids are here and they want to come here, right? So we have to do a lot of things, and we do those things in both tourism and the military. We do those things to position Hawaii as a very competitive place to be. And so combine that with the natural advantages of our beauty in the case of tourism, or our strategic position in the case of military. That combination has worked to our advantage, and that brings money in, and that money helps create jobs in the local economy too.
Next, we heard from Susan Yamada, Executive Director of the Pacific Asian Center for Entrepreneurship at UH Manoa.
Think about military, think about tourism, and even, in the day of agriculture. Why were we good at that? Why are we good at tourism? Because we have a clear competitive advantage being here in Hawaii, right? Natural beauty, proximity to Asia, grow 365 days a year. We don't have the seasons. So we need to choose, as was mentioned earlier, strategic industries where we can win. We cannot win in every sector. We should not try to win in every sector to provide a job for every single millennial who graduates from UH or wants to come back. It's impossible. We don't have the capital. We need to make strategic bets. And from what Rich was saying, what we're looking at the university is areas where we can excel if we don't shoot ourselves in the foot, like astronomy. We can be world-class because we have Mauna Kea. Nobody else has Mauna Kea. But what do we do when we are presented with that kind of opportunity? And I seriously think that it is the vocal minority that sets things back. We have to be a more vocal majority if we want that sort of job available. I'm not sure if you all know what we do at the Pacific Asian Center for Entrepreneurship, but we help students and faculty who are interested in starting jobs, and we work with Bill Richardson here at the Office of Technology Transfer. And we're trying to teach them entrepreneurial skills. And the one big thing I ask them when they come to talk to me is, what is your advantage? If you're gonna open a restaurant, fine, open a restaurant, open a t-shirt store, but tell me why you are different from everybody else. If you can't tell me that, your chances of success are very narrow. You have to have a differentiating advantage, and that's what I think we need to do here in Hawaii as we look at the overall economy. Rich touched a little bit about the Hawaii Innovation Initiative that was developed under former President Marcy Greenwood. And what they were looking at is UH brings in about $500 billion of research money. And you saw Rich and all the trickle-down effect of how it's not just benefiting the UH, it's benefiting our bigger community. All the services that are provided, all the people who work in that industry are employed, they need to live, eat, socialize. The goal was to try and bring that number to $1 billion and have research be an industry in Hawaii. And again, if we can focus and differentiate to our areas of strength, I think that's possible. That means bringing in world-class scientists who will then attract other world-class scientists. In any startup business, it's all about momentum and what kind of momentum you can begin to create. So my feeling is we have to be very focused in what we're trying to attack so that we can begin to start momentum. That great research is happening here. Great people who have great minds in that area want to come here and live regardless of what the cost of living is, because that's their life's passion.
We had some great questions from the floor.
Then we had closing remarks. Each speaker summarized his or her message.
I believe we can create a research industry at our university that's a lot bigger, support the university. There's more tech jobs here than people realize. There's a bunch of tech companies that support military activities that are looking to hire people, and they can't find them. We need to create a website for bring people that were born here home.
We as a community have to decide who we want to be, what we want to be. We have to decide, do we want to be, move more toward the Molokai model or more to the Singapore model, as I would say. And until we make that decision clearly as a community, we're always going to be butting heads and struggling.
It's really important as we think about investment and how to draw it in, that we reinforce this understanding of these traded sectors, right? That we really do compete for investment and business and money coming into the state with other regions, whether it's tourism, military, and this research enterprise. And I'm a firm believer that we have competitive strengths in enough niches that we can really grow this space. And given the thin market that we're in, we don't need to do a lot to make a real impact.
Pay your dues, work hard, take risks while you're young. Don't be afraid of failure. Nobody's going to let you blow up the building. They're going to give you enough leash, and if you fail, that's cool. Just learn from that and have been the one willing to take the risk.
Our competitive advantages as a state and as a community, I think we can kind of reevaluate how we want to focus on those competitive advantages. Speaking of special interests, for the seed company, for example, in terms of agriculture, we have great potential to grow our own food, which would also reduce that paradise tax of importing everything.
The panelists were all great, and we greatly appreciated their candor and willingness to engage in our civic platform on these issues.
And now let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward.
ThinkTech broadcasts its talk shows live on the internet from noon to 5 p.m. on weekday afternoons. And then we broadcast our earliest shows all night long. And some people listen to them all night long. If you missed a show or you want to replay or share any show, they're all archived on demand on YouTube.
Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our weekly calendar and our live stream and YouTube links, or better yet, sign on to our email list and get the daily docket of our upcoming shows.
ThinkTech has a high-tech video studio at Pioneer Plaza. We invite you to come down, see our studio, and be part of our live audience. Contact me, Jay, at thinktechhawaii.com. Be a part of our civic engagement here on ThinkTech.
We'd like to invite you to our studio to participate in our Speakers Corner program.
Speakers can speak their minds in our ThinkTech digital platform and can express their views on tasteful topics which are of interest to the community. We broadcast your comments and upload them to our YouTube channel. If you're interested in participating in our Speakers Corner program, please see our website or contact me at j@thinktechhawaii.com.
Go ahead, give us a thumbs up on YouTube or send us a tweet at ThinkTechHI. We want to know what you're thinking and how you feel about current issues and events affecting Hawaii. We want you to stay in touch with us, and we want to stay in touch with you. Let's think together.
On March 17th, we'll explore the ways the Native Hawaiian people can reach their goals other than by reinventing sovereignty. Our program this time is called Solutions Beyond Sovereignty and will be presented in the Courtroom Auditorium in 1132 Bishop Street on 4th Street Mall.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech. But first, we want to thank our underwriters.
Okay, Kaui, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like Kaui does. For additional times, check out oc16.tv.
For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a guest or a volunteer, a producer or an intern, and help us reach and have an impact on Hawaii.
Thanks so much for being part of our ThinkTech Ohana and for supporting our open discussion of tech, energy, diversification, and globalism in Hawaii. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. I'm Jay Fidell.
And I'm Kaui Lucas. Aloha, everyone.